we going?
Open titles. Oh, are they all right?
I'm your host, Ryan Daly. I'm not though. We're going into it now?
Link 1,
Go on, come back down. It's not. Okay, guys. Hello and welcome to yet another Time Tunnel TV. I'm your host, I'm Graham Wilson, and on today's show we have a man who changed the world with one bullet. The latest news from around the globe also included today, and beyond good friends of the show, we've got No Direction and the Crew in the Garage performing a few songs from their brand new album. Kicking off our show today, can we really give it up for No Direction and the Crew in the Garage performing a bit of Sing, I believe. Go on.
It's late in the evening, lost on the side. I've been sad with you for most of the night, ignoring everybody here. We wish they would disappear, so maybe we could get down now. I don't wanna know if you're getting ahead of the program. I want you to be my lady, to hold your body close, take another step into the no man's land. But for the longest time, lady, I need you, darling, come and set the tone. If you feel you're falling, won't you let me know? Oh, if you love me, come on, get involved. Feel it rushing through you from your head to toe. Oh, sing. This love is a blaze, I saw flames from the side of the stage, and the fire brigade comes in a couple of days. Until then we got nothing to say and nothing to know, but something to drink and maybe something to smoke. Let it go until our roads are changed, singing we found love in a local rave. No, I don't really know what I'm supposed to say, but I can just figure it out, then hope and pray. I told her my name and said it's nice to meet you, then she handed me a bottle of water filled with tequila. I already know she's a keeper, just from this one small act of kindness I'm in deep. If anybody finds out, I meant to drive home, but I drunk all of it now, not sobering up. We just sit on the couch, one thing led to another, now just kissing my mouth. I need you, darling, come and set the tone. If you feel you're falling, won't you let me know? Oh, if you love me, come on, get involved. Feel it rushing through you from your head to toe. Oh, sing.
No Direction, of course, with their brand new single. Okay, now before I introduce our guest for today's show, we've got some news to bring you from our studio. So without further ado, let's go straight live over to Kirsty Wood.
News reporter Kirsty Wood, and you're watching Time Tunnel News. Our first story of the day is the first scheduled airline flight, in which the flight covered 18 miles travelling between St Petersburg and Tempe, which took 23 minutes and 11 hours less than travelling by rail. The airboat line safely transported 1,204 passengers across the bay, but without a continuing supply from St Petersburg or steady income from tourist traffic, it will not be able to continue running. The airline is planned to be closed at the end of March. Former St Petersburg Mayor paid £400 for the honour of being the first passenger on the St Petersburg-Tampa airboat line. And some big news from Ford. Not only have they just released the Model T, with being such a big success that Ford have been able to reward their workers by bringing wages up to £2.40 for a 9-hour day to £5 for an 8-hour day, which is great news for the people in the Ford line of work. All thanks to their improvements of the recent Model T. Seeing the news of the rising wages for Ford workers has left a group in the Netherlands very unhappy, and after asking for a raise of their own and being denied, the textile workers have gone on strike, believed to be around 600 workers. More on that story as it develops. Also this week, the SS Acorn, an American steamship, has become the first ship to officially transit the Panama Canal. The steamer began life as the SS Schmuck, built for the Boston Steamship Line in 1902. Then around 1910 she was purchased by the Panama Railroad Company to provide shipping required for the construction of the Panama Canal. The name was changed to Acorn after Acorn Hill and Acorn Township in Panama, home to the head of the Canal Commission. So could this be a big change for how America receives and delivers its goods? Opera fans will be happy to hear that Victor Herbert's Madeline was premiered this week at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. Madeline is Herbert's second opera, but in contrast to many of its operettes and musicals, it did not prove popular and dropped from sight after its premiere run. Although it received a warm reception from the first night's audience, particularly Madeline's aria and Perfect Day, the New York Times critic dismissed it as not a notable landmark in the progress of native art. Harsh words. Last night saw Washington DC filled with people for the dedication ceremony for the about-to-be constructed Lincoln Memorial for 16th President Abraham Lincoln, which is planned to take around 3 years before construction is completed. And the main story for today is the tragedy in which Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophia, Duchess of Honneberg, have been assassinated. And on location is Chris Cawley to give us more of the latest news on that story.
I'm here outside the Mort Schiller's Cafe, where the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, Duchess of Hoffenberg, have been assassinated by a young Bosnian man known as Gavril Princip, who is believed to be part of the Black Hand and responsible for the first attack after a days early incident which a man had tried to kill the Archduke with an explosive believed to be a hand grenade. The Archduke had gone to visit the people who had got injured in the explosion. When the driver, Leo Lockett, took a wrong turn to Franz Joseph Street, Princip was standing near the Mort Schiller's Cafe when he spotted Franz Ferdinand's car as it drove past. Having taken the wrong turn, after raising the mistake, the driver put his foot on the brake and began to reverse the car. In doing so, the engine stalled and the gears locked, giving Princip his opportunity. Princip stepped forward, drew his pistol, and at a distance of about 5 feet, fired twice the car. Franz Ferdinand was hit in the neck, and his wife, Sophie, who covered up Franz Ferdinand's body, got shot in the abdomen. They both died before 11 a.m. It's unsure at this time whether Ganso Persep was working with the Bosnian government, but what we do know is today the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire has died and the people will want answers.
Thanks for that, Chris. Now in sports news, the heavyweight boxing title was on the line last night as Jack Johnson was challenged Frank Morant for the title in Paris at the Velodrome in a 20-round bout. The fight went the whole way with Johnson winning on decision, but as it came to the later rounds, it became clear that only a knockout would be the way Frank Morant could win this bout. But Johnson took him the 20 rounds and won the title deservingly. And the baseball season may be over, but there will be an expedition game on tonight being played over in Egypt, so stay tuned for that later on tonight. And that's your news for today. Thanks for tuning in to Time Tunnel News. Back to the studio.
Okay, all the way back from 1940. What an amazing time and age we live in. Thanks, Kirsty, for our news there. But more importantly, here's our guests we've ever had on the show. The latest film you've just released from the latest fashion accessory, but he has gone down in the history books as a man responsible for World War I. Guest today, Gavril Princip. Before we do, here's a quick documentary on it, how it all came to be.
We're now ready to talk about one of the most famous events in all of world history that really was the trigger for World War I, or the Great War as it was called back then. So just as a little bit of backdrop, in 1908, the Austro-Hungarian Empire formally annexes Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina. It had already been occupying it since the late 1800s, since the Ottomans were being pushed out, but then in 1908 it formally annexes it. And just as a little bit more of backdrop, as the Ottomans were being pushed out of the Balkans, it helped rekindle or bring about more hope of forming or of unifying the Yugoslavic people, the southern Slavic people. When people talk about Yugoslav, they're literally talking about the southern Slavs. So that literally means southern. So you had these nationalistic hopes, but now in 1908, it was already being occupied. A significant state that would be part of a potential future Yugoslav was now formally annexed by the Austro-Hungarians. Now you also had an independent kingdom of Serbia right here, and you could imagine that this was kind of the home base of the nationalistic movement. If only they could add the other southern Slavic states to this, it could one day turn into a greater Yugoslavia. So in that context, we get to 1914. And so let me draw a little line here. So we're getting to 1914, June 28th, which is one of the most famous dates in all of history. And you have the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. They're visiting Sarajevo, which is now it's an annexed Bosnia. And when they are there, there is a ploy, there is a scheme to assassinate them from a group. They're called the Young Bosnians. They have ties to the Black Hand, which is kind of this nationalistic group that has ties. Many people say. I mean, all of these things are all very shady and behind the scenes, but it has ties to elements in the Kingdom of Serbia. They attempt to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And it's actually a fascinating story because the initial assassination attempt is completely botched. There's even one case of one of the guys who tried to be an assassin. When it gets botched, he tries to bite on a cyanide capsule and then jump into a river. The cyanide capsule had gone bad. The river was only 10 inches deep, and so they were able to get their hands on him. And one of the conspirators, Gavrilo Princip, at this point, once the whole thing was botched, he kind of gives up on the whole assassination attempt, and he's having literally a sandwich at a cafe in Sarajevo, kind of thinking about how botched their whole attempt was. And while that was happening, a mistake on the part of those planning Archduke Franz Ferdinand's route as he was traveling within Sarajevo has them driving right near Gavrilo Princip. So he sees all of a sudden that they've taken the wrong route, that they're driving right by him again. Remember, his people already knew that there was an assassination attempt on him earlier in the day, so they should have been more careful. Now Gavrilo Princip gets up, puts his sandwich down, and starts walking over to where he sees Archduke Franz Ferdinand and Sophie's car going. Now, the drivers, once they realized that they had made a mistake, they had taken a less safe route, they try to back up, which makes things even worse because then the car starts stalling. And Gavrilo Princip literally walks up to the car and is able to shoot Archduke Franz Ferdinand and Sophie. And just to give you a sense of how important this is, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria is the heir. He is the nephew of Franz Joseph, who is the ruler of Austria-Hungary, and so he is the heir to the empire, and so he gets assassinated by Gavrilo Princip. So Franz Ferdinand assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, and we have right over here a picture right after Gavrilo Princip. I believe this is Gavrilo Princip right over here, right after he was arrested. And just to get a little sense of how this was tied to this whole Yugoslavian nationalistic movement, this is what he said once he was arrested. I am a Yugoslav nationalist, aiming for the unification of all Yugoslavs, and I do not care what form of state, but it must be free of Austria. So this act, this assassination, motivated by a nationalistic movement, motivated by a desire to maybe merge Bosnia and Herzegovina with Serbia, and maybe eventually Croatia with Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Serbia. This assassination, as we'll see in the next video, is the trigger for all of World War I. And the reason why it triggers it is because, well, there's many things you can cite. You could argue that many of the empires in Europe were already militarizing, already had a desire for conflict, but then you also had all of these alliances that essentially allowed the dominoes to fall in all of Europe, and because they had these empires, essentially much of the world to be...
Okay, welcome back. Now you filled up on exactly what went on. We're going to give you Gavrilo Princip. So, here he is, the very man himself. Okay, we've just taken in a heck of a lot of information there, but you were apparently, inadvertently, the guy that started off the Great War in June of 1914, just over 100 years ago. How did that all come about then, this assassination of Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia? I mean, what was the lead up to it? We weren't quite filled in on as to exactly why this happened.
Well, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they had no claim to the Slavic lands. Way back, their empire had been broken down when the Holy Roman Empire fell to Napoleon. They had no claim to these lands. They took them from Serbia. We wanted united Yugoslav, so we just stood for what we believe in, and we figured we had to teach Austro-Hungary a lesson for taking land that wasn't theirs.
So at that time, obviously, Austria-Hungary were quite a big deal, weren't they? They were quite a powerful nation, and obviously the Serbians felt they were getting the short shrift, and obviously you wanted to assassinate Franz Ferdinand. Now, earlier in the day, as we'd heard in the piece of film there, it was a botched attempt that went completely wrong. And rather than getting the heck out of there, they continued their normal day-to-day activities, and you were having a sandwich apparently, and the next thing is you're assassinating, of course, Ferdinand and, of course, his wife Sophia. Like a second bite of the cherry, really. You feel fortunate enough to actually get another crack at it so soon.
When I first saw the car, couldn't really believe my luck. I mean, I thought, temp's over, we'll never get back our lands now. But the car just came around the corner, and I was just standing there getting a sandwich, and I just thought, this is the best opportunity I'm going to get, so of course I was going to take it.
So in respect, you're a form of activist. I mean, you got involved a bit earlier on with the Black Hand organisation. Yeah. Can you give me a little bit of information as to who they actually were?
Well, we're the Yugoslav nationalists fighting for a united Yugoslavia, because currently all the territories are broken down, and we want to bring it all together as a unified nation state. And it's mainly a kind of young Bosnian movement. Is derived from the Black Hand, which is what I'm mainly part of, and that is what we fight for, and that's basically how it came about. The Serbians wanted us to do this, and we volunteered.
So again, how did you get to that point in the June of 1914? How did you actually get to that point? How was your childhood as a young Serbian? I mean, what led you into this sort of line of thought, if you like?
Well, there was plenty of conflict around that area of Europe at the time. There were, at that time, empires were breaking down. The Prussia and Brandenburg and everything was coming together as a unified Germany. Basically, people had been fighting for a united Yugoslav for a while. The Slavic territories, the most southern ones, were distant from Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia. So basically, I grew up knowing that so many people in Serbia wanted to have this united country, and growing up in that atmosphere, I began to believe this is what is rightfully Serbia's.
So you wanted to really make a stand as a minion, if you like, who's a student, and they were trying to sort of suppress everybody's sort of angst and their feelings and their fear against this. You were rising against the government as such, and obviously they didn't want this to happen, and obviously this is what happened. If someone had said to you, though, you would have been that central figure into kicking off the Great War, that of course was 1914-19, probably the worst war the world has ever seen, ever likely to see. What would your thoughts would have been on that when you were actually pulling the trigger on Ferdinand? Would you have thought, this is the man that's triggering off this great sort of historical event?
Well, if I knew that my actions would have led to that, I'm not. It's hard to say. I mean, there's hindsight and everything, but it's a different situation to what I was thinking. I was just thinking, this is for Serbia. Austria doesn't deserve it. This is Serbian land. So I think if I knew it, maybe I would have had more hesitation. But I still think for Serbia, I would have actually gone through with it, even if it did know it was going to cause a war.
I mean, a lot of people are under that sort of idea that it was Germany that started off the Great War. Obviously, as we know, as time progressed, 20 years later, the Second War was an entirely different ballgame. But why did the Germans feel as though they needed to get involved with the Austrian-Hungary situation and Bosnia and Serbia? How did they feel they fitted in that? What was...
Well, I think Germany still wanted an empire. I think they had a huge force starting off then. They had probably the largest army of anyone, and I thought they could make a push probably for the mainland Europe, a lot of it.
I mean, what happened to you initially when you were arrested after the, Archduke Franz Ferdinand?
Yeah.
You were arrested pretty much straight after.
Yeah.
What happened to yourself over the coming months after your arrest?
Well, there wasn't much. I was chucked in a damp cell, really, and just had to live out the rest of my days there. Just poor sanitation, poor conditions.
I mean, what we will be doing, if you don't mind, when we come back after another break, we're going to chat to you a little bit more about your influences as a child and how you were brought up in Serbia and what led you to that fateful day in June of 1914. We will be getting through to that. Okay, so it's been a great start to the interview, and I can't wait to continue chatting with you again in a few moments. But we're going to take a quick break, so we'll see you on the other side of these commercials. Okay.
Assemble Task Force X. We have another suicide mission.
Yahtzee!
Joker stole a dirty bomb hidden somewhere in Gotham.
Telling me where it is. Now!
Aren't you even going to say hello? If I didn't know better, I'd say you're trying to kill me. It's time for a very big bang.
Something's wrong at Arkham. I know how to defuse them. We've been played.
Better off on the own.
You think any of you have a shot of getting out alive without me?
Just like old times.
Say goodnight.
Do it now!
Now, before the break, we were chatting to the man himself, Gavrilo Princip, and finding out if he's really the monster that he's portrayed as. So, we're going to continue now. We're going to start, obviously, when you were a child. You were quite a small child. You were quite, well, you were actually described as weak. I've just got a few things in my notes here. That the actual leader, Tan Kosic, of the Serbians, actually, when you were trying to do the uprising in that young group, the Black Hand people there, that he described you as a weak person. How did that fuel you, actually, to be called weak?
Well, to be called weak, I think that really lit something under me. I didn't like to be called weak. I thought I was just as capable as anyone. May have been slightly petite in stature, but size isn't everything.
No.
I felt that being called weak really fueled me to really take on this uprising and just kind of really try to be at the forefront of it all.
So, again, did you take it upon yourself then to think, right, I'm going to prove I'm not weak here. I'm going to take out one of the leading figures of the Austrian-Hungarian thing. And you thought, I'm going to take this fella out. And as it happened, it did. Just moving on ever so slightly. Do you think Germany were right to get involved? And if Germany hadn't have got involved and they'd have stood aside and let things take its natural progression, do you think the First World War would have been, avoided, averted?
Yeah, I think it probably wouldn't have actually gone through, because maybe I added some fuel to the fire, but I don't think my assassination was enough to start a whole war between this multitude of countries. I believe that I would have caused a lot of tension with obviously the Austrians, and Serbia would have fought on my behalf, obviously, but the sort of stuff like France, Russia, Britain, all those involvement, I think, after Germany kind of saw a chance to kind of try and put their stamp on parts of Europe they wanted, I think that was the last straw, and then people said, this has to stop. And then the war began.
So on your arrest, what happened to the Black Hand organisation? Did that disperse, or did that continue in the wake of your assassination?
Well, it wasn't really disbanded until after the war.
Right.
The Black Hand gang did remain. There was still the Young Bosnian movement, but I think after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, it wasn't really a prominent thing anymore. It was kind of, we felt a lot had been achieved, and after the First World War, kind of it broke down.
And with the beauty of this Time Tunnel TV, how do you think things have affected the world in the last 100 years? Just a quick one.
Last 100 years, well, of course there's been another war, and basically I think the whole world is built on conflicts, and to be honest, not too much has changed. It's just the same thing over and over again.
The only thing is Yugoslavia in 1992 broke up, and it's exactly what you were aiming to do all those years ago back in 1914. So eventually, in a roundabout way, it came to fruition, didn't it? And that's about it. So again, if you could do something differently, would you do anything different?
I'm not sure there's much I can do different. I set out what I achieved to do, so not much else I can say about it.
Well, thanks for your honesty, and thanks for joining us on Time Tunnel. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you on Gavrilo, but that's about all we have time for. If you want to tune in again next week, feel free to tune into Time Tunnel TV, but thank you for participating in today's show, and we're going to head out in the same direction, no direction, with this lot doing a bit of counting stars. Can you believe it? Here we go.
I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, I've been praying hard. Said no more counting dollars, we'll be counting stars. Yeah, we'll be counting stars. Like a swinging vine, swing my heart across the line. In my face is flashing signs. Seek it out and ye shall find. Old, but I'm not that old. Young, but I'm not that bold. And I don't think the world is sold. I'm just doing what we're told. I feel something so right, doing the wrong thing. I feel something so wrong, doing the right thing. I could lie. Everything that kills me makes me feel alive. I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the